This video is a compilation of the 5 core concepts that I think are important for anybody to master in order to prepare themselves for a happy retirement. It's a little bit longer, so sit back, enjoy. This is probably the best 50 minutes on retirement that I've ever produced. I hope you enjoy it. The question I get asked fairly frequently is, hey Azul, how do I compare to my peers? You know, how do my retirement balances compare? How does my net worth compare? What are my projections for retirement income? How does that compare to other people? And particularly as they get close to retirement, right? So let's go for a walk and I'll share some numbers with you that I think you'll find interesting. So first I want to preface all this by saying we're going to be talking about the median. And the median's a little bit different, can be quite a bit different than the average. So if you had 100 people that were each making $50,000 a year, and you asked what the average would be, it would be obviously $50,000 a year. But if one of those people was Jeff Bezos, now all of a sudden the average income would be quite a bit higher. And so it can really skew the data. But if you look at the median, Jeff's not going to skew it so much. So hopefully that makes sense. So let's jump into some of these numbers. The first number I want to talk about is net worth. What's the median net worth of a 65-year-old retiree in the United States? I'm going to give you the round number, but then I'm also going to share with you the exact number. So it's basically about $270,000 is the median net worth. The actual number is $266,400. And just a reminder, your net worth is the value of your assets minus your liability. So just for a simple example, if your only asset was your home and it was worth $500,000, but you owed $200,000 on that home, then your net worth would be, in this case, $300,000. But if you owned a house that was worth $500,000 and you owed $500,000 on it, your net worth would be zero. So hopefully that makes sense. Another data point that I think you'll find interesting is, you know, how many people are actually debt-free when they're 65 years old? And the number's about 50%, which, you know, I wish it was close to 100% were debt-free, right? We talk about that on this channel. And so it's about 50% right now. The actual number is 56.7%. And unfortunately, that statistic is heading in the wrong direction. If you look at the data from 1999, it was a little over 75% of the people were debt-free. The actual number is 76.2%. So quite a few more people owe debt when they're 65 years old. And why is that? I think one of the main reasons why that is, you know, I think we've become more of a consumer society. How many times do these cardboard boxes from Amazon show up at our front step? And is it really something that we need versus something that, you know, Amazon sold us? You know, they showed us the product and we said, hey, that looks interesting, and we buy it, right? I mean, online shopping really wasn't a thing in 1999. And now it's just made it so easy to buy, unfortunately, stuff that we don't need. So I think that's one factor. The other statistic I think you'll find interesting, there's been a lot of talk in the comments about the importance of not only being debt-free as early as you can be, but specifically paying off your mortgage. And not everybody can do this. It's super hard to do. Goal there is if you can pay off your mortgage in your 50s, that really allows you to, as you're getting closer to retirement, to save more money towards retirement. And also as you're getting older to have more adventures while you're still young enough, and you have the energy and you have the health and you have the mental acuity, that you can do these things that once your health is gone is going to be really hard to do. Or even if you have your health, it just, you know, it gets harder to do things. So how many people have actually paid off their mortgage, or better said, how many people still have a mortgage when they're 65 years old? And that number is about 1 in 8 still have a mortgage at 65. And again, just like the other 1999 data about being completely debt-free, this number is trended in the wrong direction too. So it's 1 in 8 people, or 12.1% of people, still have a mortgage at 65 years old. That number in 1999 was about half of that. 6.6% of people. Now, I do want to point out, the world's quite a bit different now than what it was in 1999. And specifically, we went through a period of very low interest rates. So just because somebody has a mortgage may not be that unable to pay off the mortgage. It might be that they don't want to pay off the mortgage because they locked in maybe a 2.5% fixed 30-year mortgage, and that's inexpensive money. And they may want to just hold on to it. In fact, now, your short-term treasuries are paying over 4%. So there's this interest rate arbitrage that some people want to do. And I think that is definitely one factor that is why that number has doubled. I'm not saying that's the whole factor, but there are definitely people, I get asked a lot, should I pay off my mortgage? Should I not? If you're interested in a discussion on that, leave me a comment. And if enough of you are interested, I'm happy to talk about that. But that's one of the reasons I think that we've seen the number of people at 65 that still have a mortgage in place. And, the academic answer probably for many people probably is, no, you shouldn't pay off your mortgage. But for a lot of us, it's really just sleep at night factor, right? It just feels good. We've had mortgages, most of our adult life, and it really limits your flexibility. And if, God forbid, you were to lose your job or something like that, it makes it a lot more stressful. So in general, a lot of my clients prefer when they can to pay off that mortgage to actually pay it off, even though the academic answer might be actually hold on to it. Again, it's quality of life, right? I mean, in one of my videos recently, I talk about, optimizing on life, not your bank account. And this is an example of that. Okay, let's get on to the last one, which relates to the title of this video. And that is, what is the median income for a 65-year-old retiree in the United States? And the answer to that is it's just under $50,000, I think in high-level numbers. So in my mind, it's under $50,000. But the actual number is $47,357. And I think that number is where it is in part, thankfully. The U.S. has Social Security, so we have that as a safety net. I do think that Social Security is going to continue. I'm not a political expert, and it really is a political question whether Social Security is going to be the same 20 years from now as it is today. And probably it's not going to be, but I think it's going to be a significant safety net, a significant source of income. I shouldn't say safety net, right? This is money we all paid into the system. So I do think Social Security is going to be around, but I don't have a crystal ball. But what I do know is people that are over 65 is a growing demographic in the United States. There's more of us. I say us because I'm going to be 65 pretty soon myself. There's more of us in that age bracket than in a long, long time. And we vote, right? So I think we can depend on it. Specifically, if you're close to being 65 now, I do think you can depend on that. These are 5 reasons to consider retiring as soon as you can. Let's go for a walk and talk about these reasons. And be sure to stay until the end because the last one, number 5, is going to surprise you coming from a financial advisor. The first reason to retire as soon as you can is your health. None of us know how long we have. The reality is for many of us, our jobs don't feel that stressful. But the reality is our jobs are stressful, right? They don't feel that way because we've been doing them so long and we're good at what we do. But there's still stress of deadlines. There's still stress of dealing with people. There's still stress of getting projects done on time, on budget, things like that, dealing with clients, trying to keep everybody happy. There's stress associated with that. And, to the extent we can get rid of that stress in our lives, that can be a really helpful thing and really extend the healthy time that we do have in front of us. So just think about the reduced stress that you could have. I've used the analogy before of the frog in boiling water where the temperature gets turned up slowly and the frog doesn't realize that the temperature is being increased. And I think for a lot of us, our work is that way. We don't realize how much stress that we're really under. So that's number 1. Number 2 is time. Most of us have been working a long time. Regular viewers of my channel tend to be pretty good savers. So we've done a good job of saving our money in the past. And there are ways to get more money, but there's no way to get more time. So time is the only non-renewable resource that we have. And at some point we have to look and say, okay, this is the amount that we have to retire, and we're gonna learn to make it work. So I think the trade-off for a lot of us is worthwhile, right? We could always work 10 more years and maybe have double the amount of money in our investment accounts that we have today, if we're fortunate, right? It doesn't take that big of a return to double your investments, right? If you get a little over 7% a year in your investment accounts, over a decade, those investment accounts are going to double if you don't have to touch them, in theory. But at some point, we have to say, enough is enough. This is what I have, and I need to enjoy it. I need to take care of myself. I need to fulfill the promises that I made to my spouse and shared and said, these are our retirement dreams. We want to do this and that. And, the last thing you want to have happen is to have a surprise stroke or a heart attack, and not be able to pursue those dreams, and maybe never be able to pursue those dreams, right? So time is the limited resource. None of us know how much time we have, but it is limited, right? So probably worth the trade-off of retiring a little bit early and being able to utilize our time. I can tell you, I work with a lot of folks that have retired, and occasionally somebody will say, I wish I hadn't retired early, but it's at least 10 to 1 where people say, I wish I had retired sooner. And once you go through the transition, then you're really glad that you did that. So that's number 2. Number 3 is relationships, right? Relationships, to build relationships is a 4-letter word, what it takes to build relationships. And that is T-I-M-E, time. A lot of us have aging parents. We have adult children, maybe with grandkids, that could really use some of our help with the kids. We don't have to do that, but a lot of us want to do that. Same thing with aging parents, right? It makes their transition into the next stage where they're at in their life a lot easier if they have family helping them. So I know not all of us can do that, but I think if we can, that works out very nicely. It's a nice thing to be able to do. So relationships, and then just building new friendships and having time to invest in existing friends and new friends can really be beneficial. And again, there's ways to make more money. There's not ways to make more time. So that's number 3. Number 4 is time to pursue other passions and hobbies. A lot of us have been busy working hard, the responsibilities of paying off our mortgage, of saving money for our children's college education. A lot of us now are at the phase of our lives where those obligations are behind us, right? One of the things is trying to pay off your mortgage by the time you're 50 years old, and that gives you a lot of freedom. And so really for the first time in a long time, maybe since we were 18 years old, we have a lot of freedom. We have fewer responsibilities. We can go and we can be a little selfish, and I think it's okay to be a little selfish. So that's the other thing with the outside hobbies and pursuits. A lot of people, that means travel. I will share with you that's the most common answer I get when I ask people what they're planning on doing in retiring is travel. But I can also share with you for a lot of people, travel can be tiring, and it can be discombobulating, where it takes you out of your element. And like for me, I like that. For me, that's refreshing. But for a lot of people, that can be stressful. So if traveling is a core part of what you think you want to do in retirement, I would encourage you to think of it almost like an appetizer versus a main dish. It may be a main dish for you. It may be something that you do full time. It may be something that you're more active doing. But for a lot of folks, it ends up being something that, maybe they want to do 10 weeks out of the year, but they don't want to do it 40 weeks out of the year. So having other interests, other hobbies, other organizations that you're interested in helping out, spending time with your grandkids, like we talked earlier, can be a nice use of time as well. So that's number 4, is just developing other pursuits, other passions. Like for me, I love to learn, right? So I've taught myself how to computer program several years ago, got pretty good at it, to the point where I could develop applications for iPhones and web applications, stuff like that. I do a little bit of angel investing on the side in some technology companies. And I just wanted to understand the difference between a technology company that's hard to develop and one that's easier to develop. And then also, really what is the job of a chief technical officer, and what kind of characteristics lead to somebody being successful in that role versus having challenges. So I'm a lifetime learner. I enjoy learning. I learned Spanish within the last 5 years. That was a big challenge for me. But I just share these as some examples of what I've done. And I think it's important to develop these other passions, things that get you excited to get out of bed and do. Okay. And so the last one is number 5. And this is the one that I said is going to be a little controversial coming from a financial advisor. Number 5 is, for many of us, we're financially ready. It may not feel like we're financially ready. Maybe our goal is to get to X dollars and we have 90% of X dollars. And is it really worth working another 3 years to get to 100% of X? Or, we're humans, we're adaptable. We have certain plans and saying, okay, we're going to spend this much money a year, but, are there things that you could tweak where you could retire sooner and get some of this pressure that we talked about earlier? Are there things you could do that would allow you to pursue these passions, these dreams, get the freedom of retiring sooner and say, you know what, I'm at 90% of goal. That's close enough. I'm not going to keep working in the hopes of getting to 100% or 110%. And, this isn't financial advice for you. We're all different. I don't know your specific situation, but for a lot of folks, if you're close enough, I think it's okay. And for a lot of folks, when you put in the plan, you put in, this is what a tax rate's going to be, and we're going to have money until this age. Well, we don't know what tax rates are going to be in 20 years, and we don't know when our clients are going to pass away. So there's a lot of assumptions there. And when you get close enough, I think you can say, if you feel like it, say, you know what, this is close enough. We're going to make it work. You'll never, there's always a reason to work one more year. In fact, I have a video, the most dangerous disease for people close to retirement, and that's OMY syndrome, one more year. And people say that working one more year helps your retirement plan by 3 years. And there's one additional year that you're not paying for retirement, so that's 1 year of savings. Then there's one additional year that you're putting money into your savings, and it's kind of said tongue in cheek, but the stress of working an extra year will take another year off of your lifespan. So you have one less year that you have to worry about planning. Again, that's kind of tongue in cheek, but just highlights the fact that we're never really ready to retire. And I think sometimes when we get close enough is good enough. These are 8 things that I think you've earned the right to let go of if you're over 60, or even if you're approaching 60. And I'm going to warn you, these are controversial items, and they get more controversial as we go. And the last 3 are going to be very controversial. So let me know what you think of them, but let's start with number 1. We'll just jump right into the heat. And that is, I think if you're 60 or older, you should think about stop saving. You've probably been saving your whole life. If you're a viewer of this channel, you've probably been saving fairly aggressively. You've probably been living the lifestyle of the millionaire next door. Now, do I really think you should completely stop saving? Maybe. Depends on how much you've saved. But at a minimum, I want you to stop sacrificing unnecessarily. If you're saving every dime that you can, there's an admirable trait to that, right? I have respect for that. But you might be sacrificing unnecessarily. And how do you know? You know, I'm biased and I've said it before, but I think you need to have a financial plan, right? What are your goals? What's it going to take to get there? And above and beyond that, you've earned the right to enjoy that money. You're probably never going to get as much utility, as much joy out of that money as you will today. Okay, so that's number one. That was probably fun to hear. Now for one that is going to be harder for people to hear. And that is, stop spending on things that don't bring you joy. You know, many of us have been doing, you know, I'm almost 60. I've been doing this my whole life. Buying things and then later saying, you know, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And hopefully we're all learning from our life experience and we're getting wiser about that. And, you know, if you need help on this, one of the things you can do is you can just look at, you know, what is the last $1,000 that I spent in aggregate in discretionary spending and things I didn't have to? And just ask yourself, you know, how many of these gave me joy in the moment? And that's important, right? Having dinner or coffee with a friend, with your spouse, with your life partner, that's incredibly valuable, right? So it gave me joy in the moment. How many of the things that I bought, that I purchased, is continuing to give me joy a week later, a month later, a year later, a decade later, right? Things like that. And just do an inventory of how you're spending your money and be critical. And ask yourself, is this bringing me joy? And, you know, for me, a lot of the stuff I was spending my time on didn't bring me joy. And when I did that inventory, the thing for me that brought me joy are the things that I viewed as experiences and adventure and time with friends and people that I love. So number two is stop spending money on things that don't bring you joy. Okay. Number three, again, I'm getting a little personal here and I apologize, but I think these are helpful things for all of us to think about. So they're a little more direct in my videos, but let's jump in. Number three, stop pretending. Stop pretending to be somebody that you're not. Right? It's you be you. And you know what? You are a great person. The world needs you, your authentic self, right? Don't pretend to be somebody that you're not. And, you know, we all have a lot of roles that we play in life, right? We're a parent, maybe we're a parent, maybe we're a spouse, maybe we're a life partner, we're a family member to our brother, sister, whoever, we're friends with somebody. And so these are all authentic roles. They're different versions of you, but you be you and give yourself the freedom and the permission and the love to say, I am good enough the way that I am. You know, I'm fortunate. I probably got to that point sometime in my early 30s, but you know, as much fun as my 20s were, they would have been more fun if I had gotten comfortable. And I say I got there in my early 30s, but the reality is each year I get more comfortable being who I am and knowing that, you know, I'm not a match for everybody. Not everybody's going to say, hey, I love hanging with Azul, and that's okay. But I think you've earned the right to be you. Okay, number four, kind of related. We all have a tendency to put ourselves down. And I want you to think about stopping that. And if you are putting yourself down, I want you to stop that. You know, there's all kinds of reasons for why we might put ourselves down, right? But we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses. We're all human and none of us are perfect. And, you know, that's a rule that I have is I don't put myself down and I don't allow people in my life that put me down. Life is just too short. We become the 6, 10 people that we hang around with the most. And I want you to be hanging around with people that are uplifting you and are encouraging you to be the best version of yourself. But if you're putting yourself down, you're 60 years old. If you're not going to stop that now, you'll never stop it. So, you know, if you need to see a therapist, I have, right? I have in my 30s. I had some baggage I had to deal with. Go see a therapist, but I want you to free yourself of that. Okay, as long as we're seeing a therapist, let's go into the next one. And that is I really encourage you to stop worrying. Worrying steals joy from all of us. And life is too short to be worrying, right? None of us can control the future. The future's not guaranteed for any of us, right? Regret is about looking in the past, and anxiety and worrying is about looking in the future. And you know, the past, you can tell I've been through therapy. The past is done and we can't rewrite the past. And the future is not guaranteed to any of us, and we can't control the future. So you know what? We do the best that we can, and that's good enough. Okay, now on to the ones that are really going to get me in trouble. Okay, number 6, stop over supporting adult children that can take care of themselves, right? As parents, we want what's best for our kids. It's super easy to say, oh, I'll help you go to graduate school, or I'll help you put a down payment on your house. And if you can afford to do that and your retirement is still solid, great. If that's something you want to do, but don't put at risk your retirement to help out adult children that can take care of themselves. They have student loans to go to graduate school. They have mortgages to buy houses. They have car loans to buy cars. But you know what type of loan they don't have? They don't have retirement loans. So number 6, stop over supporting adult children that can take care of themselves. Okay, I know that's controversial. I'm a parent. I'm guilty of over supporting my kids as well. But I just want to encourage you, if your retirement is not shored up, give yourself permission to say, you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore. Okay, number 7, stop taking your health for granted. You know, having time in retirement is critical, but our retirement's going to look very different if we allow our health to go south. So invest that time in your health. Invest the time to do some shopping for healthier foods. Invest that time to cook healthy food. Invest that time to stay active. It's so critical that we stay active. And if you can afford it, maybe consider hiring somebody to help you achieve those goals. Okay, and the last one is stop taking your time for granted. If you're 60 years old, and regular viewers know what I'm going to say, you have less than 1,000 weeks of healthy, active time. Some of us are going to be lucky and get more than that, but most of us aren't. So take advantage of the time that you have. Today I'm going to share with you 4 important but unfortunately uncomfortable rules about retirement. And I'm going to save the most important one to last, so be sure to watch until then. The first one is the venerable, the famous 4% rule, which gives you a guideline as to whether or not you have enough money to retire. That rule is based on a fairly volatile portfolio. When Benson did his study, it was based on portfolios anywhere from 50% exposure to stocks to 70% exposure to stocks. And certainly as you get closer to a 70% stock portfolio, that's not a low risk portfolio. So there's a fair amount of volatility. So buckle up and be ready for that. The second one's related to that, which is, unfortunately, there is no bulletproof portfolio, right? There's portfolios that have worked in the past and should work in the future, but it doesn't mean that there's not going to be bumps in the road and there's not going to be surprises, right? The SEC has a guideline where we've all heard this in ads. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. And there's a reason the SEC wants people to put that in their ads, because it's very true, right? What moves markets are things that we can't think about ahead of time. There's surprises at some level. Some of them were huge surprises, like the pandemic certainly was for me a huge surprise. Like the financial crisis in 2007, 2008, less of a surprise for me, but still a surprise. Black Friday, for those of us older to remember, 1987, when the market moved 20% in one day. You know, these are surprises that we don't expect to happen, and that's why they move the market. So just because something's worked in the past doesn't mean it's going to work in the future. And the third uncomfortable truth is there are some risks that are worth taking that are going to make you uncomfortable. And I think the best example of that is if you have a financial plan put together professionally, it's likely, or even if you do it on the internet, it's likely going to give you a likelihood of success. And one of the things you'll notice is none of those plans will ever say it's 100% likely to succeed, right? I think you want to be in the 90% range. For some people, it might be okay to even be in a little bit less than 90%. But I think the price that you pay, certainly when you're at 95% likely of succeeding, the uncomfortable truth is what you have to give up in order to go from 95% likelihood of succeeding to 99% is probably not a price that you want to pay. It's just too great of a price. What it means is you're going to have to keep working. You're going to have to save more money. You're going to have a more volatile portfolio than you want. And or you're going to spend less money in retirement. And frankly, I just don't think any of those are worth it, right? These plans are not written in stone, right? You don't know when you're going to die. You don't know what tax rates are going to be, even for when you file your taxes next year for this calendar year. So how the heck are we supposed to know what it's going to be in 20 years and 30 years, et cetera? So I think that's a risk worth taking, but it is going to make you uncomfortable. And finally, before I get to the last risk, which again, I think is the most important one, I have a quick favor to ask. If you found this video helpful, if you've made it this far, please hit the like button. It really does help me. I'm a fairly new YouTube channel, and I'm trying to get the word out to other people like yourself that this kind of content can help. So take a second, hit the like button, and even better, leave a quick comment. Let me know what you think of this video, how I could make it better, and if there's any other uncomfortable retirement surprises that are on your radar screen that maybe I didn't cover in this video. So now on to what I consider to be the most important uncomfortable truth. And that is, if you're 60 years old, and most of us watching these videos are either 60 or pretty close to 60. And, you know, retirement's on the horizon. That's why we're watching videos like this. But if you're 60 years old, the uncomfortable truth is you likely have less than 1,000 weeks remaining of healthy, active time. Let that sink in for a second. 1,000 weeks. That's not a lot of time, right? So we want to make sure that we're making the most of it. And I'm sorry to put this uncomfortable truth on your plate, but better you think about it now and you're intentional in how you spend your time and you just go after it, right? When we were younger, we could put things off for longer and longer. But as we get older, the cost of doing that is much higher because we just don't have as much time left. Fortunately, many of us feel like, you know what, we're probably a little bit behind financially. And part of that is because of the culture of comparison, right? Looking at our neighbors, looking at what they have. And in the United States, it's hard, right? Because there's a lot of signals of wealth that I call false signals, right? Anybody can drive a nice car if they can qualify for the car loan, right? Anybody can have a lot of toys if they're willing to have debt. But, you know, the reality is for those of us that are financially responsible and say, yes, I'd like to have those toys, but I'm certainly not going to put them on my credit card. You know, those of us that are financially responsible, it can look like we're behind. So I want to give you some numbers to put your mind at rest and to let you see where you're at. And I suspect the vast, vast majority of the people watching this video are going to be doing much better than they think. And before I jump in, I just want to share, you know, I don't want anybody to be critical and say, hey, Azul, what's wrong with being average? There's absolutely nothing wrong with being average, but there is, I think, being average financially in America, as far as the statistics for savings and retirement and aspects like that, unfortunately, it puts you in a bad situation. And I'll share more at the end of the video. In fact, I'm going to share some of the most important data and insights at the end. So be sure to stick around. We'll start off with kind of the basics. You know what? You know, the basics is an emergency fund. Do you have an emergency fund? Can you withstand 2 to 3 months if you were to lose your job or wreck your car or something like that? And unfortunately, almost 2/3 of Americans don't have any emergency fund at all, right? I mean, that's puts people in a really bad position. If they lose their job, they don't have much time until they need to get that next job in order to pay their bills, in order to pay their rent, in order to pay for the necessities. So right there, I suspect that puts people, again, that's almost 2/3 of Americans, 64% of Americans. So right there puts you in the upper third. And let's keep going. Let's go for a walk, and I'll share some more of this data. Okay, savings account. Believe it or not, that 1/3 of Americans say that they have no money at all in a savings account, and half of Americans say that they have less than $1,000 in a savings account. So, if you look at the building blocks of your finances, right, I think one of the first things you need to do is have an emergency fund to give you the buffer. The second thing is to have some savings, right? And then the third thing you need to do is start saving for retirement. And when you hear the retirement numbers here, they're unfortunately really startling. This is according to Fidelity, which is the largest provider or custodian for 401ks. Now, Vanguard just came out with their numbers as well, but Fidelity has like over 10 times the amount of 401k accounts than Vanguard. So I think the Fidelity study is broader, and that's why I'm sharing that data with you. Okay, the median account balance in a 401k in the United States, and this is for people that have an account. The median for everybody is under $35,000. So if you have $36,000 in your 401k account, you're already above the median. But let's break, and this is just for people that have accounts. There's a large number of people that don't have accounts, right? So, but let's break that down by age. If you're 20 to 29, the median balance in a 401k account at Fidelity is $5,000. 30 to 39, it's $16,000. You can see it's growing pretty nicely. 40 to 49, it doubles again to $32,000. And then 50 to 59, the median 401k balance at Fidelity is $53,000. Now, it's hard to save money, right? Those people had to sacrifice to do that. But, if you look at what type of retirement that can provide for, unfortunately, life in America is expensive, right? That's maybe, if they're fortunate and they have Social Security, that'll pay for 3 to 4 years at that $53,000, but probably not. It probably won't pay for that. So that's an important statistic. I suspect many of the readers, viewers of the channel are doing better than that. And if you're not, you do what you can, right? The next time you get a raise, maybe half of that goes to your future self and you save that, and the other half goes to your current self. The other thing is, just understanding the basics of how to build financial security. Unfortunately, this isn't taught in our schools, but it's really, if you're not saving money, it's about coming up with a budget, and you start with the necessities, your rent, your food, your utilities, things like that. And then above that, you go to your wants. But depending on what your savings goal is, maybe a fair amount of your budget goes to your necessities and a few wants. If you're not saving now, 10% is a good place to start. If you are saving and you're saving 10%, I think 15 to 25%. I know it's hard to do, but I think 15 to 25% is better. The other thing I want to share is it's not enough to save. You also have to invest, right? There's something called compounding interest. And the nice thing about that is as you get older, your money starts working harder for you because you're getting returns on your returns that you had gotten in previous years. So it's this exponential curve that's helping you. But unfortunately, it cuts the other way too. If you're getting less than inflation, then compounding works against you. And each year, your earnings power is even getting less. So you want to make sure that you're investing it. The goal is to beat inflation over time. Now, in a year like 2022, when inflation was really high, you may not beat inflation. In fact, most people didn't in 2022, but, look over a 7 or a 10-year period. Okay, let's go back to some of the statistics here. So I talked about people that are over 50. And having, about $50,000, I forget what the exact number is. I'll look it up while we're talking. And I said, you know, if you're fortunate, that'll give you 3 or 4 years of spending in retirement. And, you know, 3 or 4 years, that's in the, you know, $10,000 to $15,000 a year range. So it's not much. The actual number for 50 to 59s in Fidelity's 401k, the median balance was 53,000. So again, that's not much. And then if you look at the average Social Security check, and this is from the Social Security Administration, is $1,800. You know, if you combine those two, it's going to be a very thin and lean retirement. So do what you can now while time is still on your side. But if you look at these statistics and you say, okay, I feel a lot better, that's good. I don't want you to feel behind. And I believe that success begets success. So if you're successful with your with saving, if you're successful with budgeting, keep doing that, because that's going to build on itself. And if you're not doing that, set the goal where it's something that's achievable. Like I said, if you're not saving 10%, I think that's a good first goal. These are 5 reasons I think you should be super careful before pulling the trigger and buying a home in a 55 plus community. Let's go for a walk and we'll talk about this. And be sure to stay until the end, because spoiler alert, I'm going to share with you 2 bonus reasons to be careful. And I think the last 2 are the most important. Okay, so the first reason is these 55 plus communities have a lot of rules and regulations. They can really restrict the guests that you have come staying, whether you can have your adult children come and stay over Christmas, grandkids. You know, typically you can have guests, but for just so many nights, right? And there's rules and regulations about, a lot of rules and regulations about the upkeep on your house and the paint of your house. There's just a lot of rules and regulations. And for that reason, I suggest if you are thinking about buying in a 55 plus community, be sure to get the deed covenants, be sure to look at the meeting notes, and be sure to look at the current budget, right? The current budget, you just want to make sure that the HOA is healthy. Because the last thing you want them doing is raising fees or doing a special assessment to raise money right after you buy, right? You want to know that your purchase price is your purchase price. And it would be really bad if you bought your house and then there was a $5,000 special assessment that you were on the hook for. So look at that. Look at the meeting notes. See if they're kind of, you know, what kind of things that the HOA, what kind of things that the organization is worried about. Do they seem to be the types of things that align with your values, or do they seem kind of petty? The same thing with the rules. You just want to be careful, because the rules often say, whether you can have pets or not. And if so, what kind of pets that you can have, and how many pets you can have, and how big those pets can be. And then how many vehicles you can have, and, you know, what type of vehicles. Can you have a golf cart? How many vehicles can you have? Where can they park? There's just a lot of rules and regulations, and oftentimes these rules and regulations are backed up with fines. And when it comes time to sell your house, you know, they're going to likely put a lien on your house if you haven't paid those fines. So they have pretty strong enforcement leverage over you. So just be careful of the rules and regulations. That's number 1. Number 2 is they can be expensive. You know, I mentioned the HOA earlier, you know, and one of the reasons that people like 55 plus communities is there's a lot of amenities, right? There's probably a fitness center on site. There's a pool on site. Maybe they have a happy hour every evening, which is great when you first move in, if those are the things that you want, right? You're self-selecting for that. But as you get older, you might say, you know, going to happy hour every night probably isn't so good for my health. So you're going to skip out on that. But you know what? Your HOA fees are still funding those quote unquote free drinks for your neighbors. So that can get expensive. Also, the amenities, you might decide there's a gym down the street that you like using a lot better. But you know what? Your HOA fees are paying for the on-site gym. So it can get expensive because of the HOA, and usually there's no cap on what those HOA fees can be. So you're kind of signing up for a long-term commitment, and you don't have a whole lot of control based on control on those HOA fees. So it can be expensive. Just go in with your eyes open, know what you're getting into. The third one is, you know, It's nice because you have other people your age. It's nice because you may, same stage of life. So it can be nice in that regard, but it's a double-edged sword, right? When you're in a community like this, I've heard that there's a lot of cliques. There's the in crowd, just like in high school, there's the in crowd and the out crowd. And I suspect for a lot of us, that would get old pretty quickly. And then there's also, kind of like running for high school, the president of your high school class. There's a lot of people that might want to be in leadership, and there might be some sharp elbows on that. You have a group of people that have a lot of time on their hands. They've probably been successful in their careers, and they're looking for ways to deploy that, and maybe even, maybe they were a manager and they had control over their team, and they miss having that control. And now the HOA, now the 55 plus community is their new thing that they want to control. And for most of us, we're not going to like that. And for my female viewers out there, you probably know this, but as we get older, the ratios, there's a lot more women than there are men. So if you're single, if you end up being single, if your spouse happens to pass away, the numbers are not in your favor in a 55 plus community in general. And I'm going to leave a link in the website for 2 articles that I found really helpful as I was doing this research. And be sure to stay to the end, because the last 2 points are really critical. So I want you to stay to the end. And on the subject of all this, if you find this video helpful, if this is being helpful, do me a favor, leave me a thumbs up. It really does help other people find my channel in these videos, and hopefully we can help them as well. So for women, the ratio tends to be 3 women for every men in these 55 plus communities. So for the single men, good for you. The odds are in your favor. But for the single women, the odds are against your favor. So just something to know. Also, what ends up happening is these 55 plus communities, right? Part of the attraction is the amenities. So there's a new development, and people that are moving into town, would you rather live in a brand new community that has these brand new facilities, or one that's 10 years or 20 years old down the street? You'd rather live in the new community, right? So the new communities tend to be super popular. Surprisingly, I was really surprised by this. 10% of American seniors live in a 55% plus community, right? So there's definitely some perks to it. There's definitely some things that they're doing right. But there tends to be a fair amount of demand for the new 55 plus communities and less demand for the old ones. So if you buy in today, well, in 10 years, your community is going to be the 10-year-old development. And maybe down the street from you is going to be the new one. And it can be hard to sell because of that. So that's another negative, right? You might end up systemically buying high and selling low because of that dynamic. Okay, let's keep going. So that was number 5, just the popularity and the fact that your new development is going to be the 10-year-old development, or the 20-year-old development in 20 years when maybe it's time to sell your unit. So here's the bonus ones, the ones that I think are important. First, it's obvious, but I think it's worth talking about. The lack of age diversification in a 55 plus community, right? At first, it might seem nice to not have, loud kids running around the neighborhood. But I think there's a lot to be said for having neighbors that are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, and people in different stages of life, and having this mixed community. I think there's a lot to be said from that. I think it keeps us young when we hang around with young people. So I think that that's a key aspect, right? Just having that diversification in your life. And then the last one I touched on, so I kind of gave it to you early. The last one is just while there's not a lot of choice when you're buying in, because everybody wants to be in the new development, 10, 15, 20 years later, they can be hard to sell. You can have reduced pricing just because yours is no longer the shiny new development. So those are some things to be super careful of with 55 plus communities. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, give me a thumbs up. As the kids say, thumbs for likes and subs for love. If you haven't subscribed yet, think about doing that. Do leave me a comment. I love reading your comments. It's kind of one of the currencies for me of why I'm doing the YouTube channel. We were able to cover a lot of ground in this video, but the one topic I didn't have time to talk about is why it's important to look poor in order to build your net worth and enjoy your retirement. You can find out more here. I hope you enjoy that video as well. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.